Hi, I'm Jason Norris, and this is On the Go FM, episode 102. I like to talk about what else you can do with a podcast and exploring ways to make your message mobile. Teaching, training, telling stories, and changing lives. You can do it all with a podcast. Our culture has changed tremendously. The way we communicate has changed radically. In many ways, technology's to blame, if you think the changes are bad. If you look on the bright side and keep up with the changes, you will see amazing possibilities for communicating with people today. Of course, as a podcaster, I believe podcasting is the best way to make a deep connection with the people that you want to reach or to teach. But before I get to all of that, let's take a look at some of the things that have changed. Some folks like Brady Shearer of Pro Church Tools says a major shift in culture has happened when smartphones and social media appeared on the scene. He says we're experiencing the biggest communication shift in 500 years, the single biggest communication change since the printing press. Now that is huge, and I agree with Brady, and I'll get back to more of his perspective in just a moment. Now, the thing that is driving communication change is what this other guy, Peter Diamandis, calls exponential technologies. He describes it sort of like it's a chain reaction of many innovations in technology. And he said that always leads to an enormous upheaval and opportunity. Now, he says there are 6 stages in this chain reaction. I'll provide a link in the show notes for this episode so you can go out and actually look at the 6 stages that he describes. When you get there, and when you look at those 6 stages, take a very close look at the second stage, stage number 2. He says that the early growth of exponential technologies is deceptively slow. It almost appears like there's nothing happening. And there's nothing changing. In fact, it's like that old question, would you rather that I give you $1 million right now or 1 penny today and double it every day for a month? And just let's say that month is February. When you start out, the value is very small. I mean, on day 1, you get a penny. Day 2, it's 2 cents. On day 3, it's 4. And day 4, it's 8 cents, 16 cents, 32 cents, 64 cents. All right, so after a week, you only have 64 cents. That's not much change. But as you keep going, day 8, it's $1.28. By the end of the week, it's $81.92. Now, the change has increased dramatically, and we're only about halfway through the month. Now, if you start that 3rd week, you get $163.84, and that ends up making it up by the end of that week, $10,485.76. More than $10,000 since starting with 1 penny 3 weeks ago. Now, that is significant change. If you carry that on out all the way to the rest of February, then you go from $20,000 up to $1,342,177.28. Now, that little penny has made a massive change in your bank account. I mean, it's almost unbelievable that 1 penny doubled could become more than $1 million in just 28 days. Well, in the same way, the change in communication technologies, it started small. It's like the early days of Facebook and YouTube. College kids are joining and sharing status updates and poking their friends. People are watching cat videos. Smartphones allow those kids then to snap photos of their parties while parents and educators wonder about their potential job opportunities once they graduate, if they graduate. Well, how in the world will these fun, silly apps change culture? Early growth is deceptively slow. Now, if we go back to Peter Diamandis' 6 stages, look at stage 3. As the doubling of exponential technologies continues, suddenly the growth begins to skyrocket, and that is when disruption begins. That's that doubling penny when suddenly you've got $10,000 or more. It's when 2 billion people are hanging out on Facebook. It's when Blockbuster goes bankrupt. That's when we never leave home without a smartphone. That's when we stay at home, still tied to our smartphones, while at the same time watching movies and TV shows without a cable or satellite subscription. Disruption is when what you thought you knew about how to communicate with people no longer works. Disruption is when what you thought you knew about building communities seems quaint. And despite the disruption that has already happened, many people, I think, still don't notice it. And guess what? There's much more disruption to come. We will all eventually realize we have to change how we communicate to reach a new generation. Now, one way to communicate with the new culture is social media. And now back to Brady Shearer. That's what Brady emphasizes when he talks to churches specifically. And his example is this. There are 168 hours in a week. If your Sunday church service is 1 hour, how is your church reaching people in the other 167 hours? Brady strongly urges churches to seize the 167. So I got a question for you. How are you making use of the 167 to teach people? And this is also not just about churches. It's about educational institutions. It's about your business. How are you, or how could you, make use of the 167 to survive, perhaps even thrive? And so I appreciate the work that Brady is doing to help churches realize that culture has changed. But there is another way to reach people that goes way beyond social media sound bites, live video that is watched for only a few seconds, and of course, the memes of the month. Now, of course, getting good at social media is certainly one way to reach out to people now, but it does have some limitations. And social media experts like Brady Shearer say that the most important thing you can do is to stop the scroll. After all, if people scroll right by your article, your audio, your image, or your video, then you don't get their attention and they miss your message. Ultimately, most social media messages are sound bites. And since social media includes text and images, maybe we could just call them message bites. The goal is usually to entice you to click a link for even more. And, of course, this works really well for some online marketers. And hey, perhaps you're listening to this now because a message bite stopped your scroll. But social media alone will not maintain the kind of connection you hope to make when you post your message bite. You really want them to get your whole message. You want them to understand the message and respond to your call to action. So a better way, make your message mobile with a podcast. This is a way to connect deeply with the people who need to hear what you have to say. It's a way to reach people who are busy, who have less time to show up to your place, whatever place that might be. You can reach people who are always on the go. They can hear your stories, learn from your teaching, and continue their training. You can deliver your message to them on the mobile devices they carry everywhere they go. Don't leave home without it. Well, don't worry. They won't. They don't. They never do. Today it's a smartphone or a smartwatch. Tomorrow it might be something else. But what I can guarantee you this, the tech will be mobile. And a podcast is the best way to reach people on the go. Why? For example, they can listen anywhere they want to listen without having to look at a screen. Podcast listeners can listen whenever they want and wherever they want. They can exercise with a podcast. They commute with a podcast. They shop for groceries with a podcast. They walk the dog with a podcast. Some even work while listening to a podcast. Many like to listen to podcasts that are like 5 to 15 minutes long. Other people love hour-long shows, and still others stick around for 2 or 3 hours, just clicking pause until they've heard it all. The point is, you will cultivate a deeper connection with people with a podcast than you will by sharing message bites on social media. Now, if you would like to give this kind of podcasting a try, get ready to adjust your mindset. The mindset that you need to make your message mobile with a podcast is different. Okay? Making your message mobile with a podcast means that you have to fight through alternate messages out there. Forget the top podcast charts and industry articles about the most successful shows in 2019. To make this kind of podcast work, you need a different mindset. Podcasts like these are not about becoming famous. Popular podcasts have gotten there for different reasons. Often it's because the host of the show was already famous and well-funded. That's not what you're doing with this kind of podcast. So that's mindset shift number 1. Forget famous. Focus on the people who need your message. You also have to unshackle your on-location mindset. For many of you, showing up to your building is the most important thing. If you're a business, getting customers into the door to buy something is the only ROI that matters. If you're a school, the return on investment you seek is a rise in enrollment and tuition. And if you're a church, any kind of marketing and advertising has to see an almost immediate increase in attendance to count. This on-location mindset does have its place, but that is not the point of this other way to use a podcast. And that ROI is not what you need to look for. It's not the new advertising channel to throw money at. Podcasting is about connection with people. Connecting with them in a way that makes sense to them. Connecting in a way that demonstrates you understand the challenges that people face today. And when you make that connection, they will listen to your message. And I'm Jason Norris. I thank you for listening to my message today on episode 102 of the podcast at On The Go FM. Listen to the On The Go FM podcast in your own podcast player, whatever that might be. You can listen on Apple Podcasts, listen on Google Podcasts, subscribe on Android, Overcast. We're on Spotify too. You can find us in there. And of course, any podcast app that you use, you can use our RSS feed. You can find all of that at onthego.fm.